Hello and welcome back. In the last section, we built up the layout component comprising of the navbar, the main component, and essentially the footer here. Okay, we also did a few styling implementations with respect to the scroll bar and the scroll bar on the x-axis as well. Okay, so we've reached a good starting point right now in terms of essentially taking this to the next level and building further components which are important for the app business, the food app business. Okay, before we do that, I want to take a pause here and make sure that our source code is safe from let's say disk crashes or machine crashes or essentially any corruption of our hardware, right? So in order to do that, we're going to go ahead and use a source code repository where we're going to maintain our source code. So it's going to be available to us at all times, right? Regardless of whether it rains or shines. So I'm going to be using a code repository called GitHub. Let's head over to GitHub here. All right, and here you can sign up, and it's a free service that you can sign up here using your email ID and other details. It should be quick enough, right? And once you sign up, you can log in and then create repositories for your projects. Before I go ahead and do this step, we also need to have something on the client side here as well, which is known as the Git client. So in order to interact with GitHub from a remote command line like the one we have here, okay, so we need to install Git client. Okay, so let's go ahead and search for Git client, and again this is going to be specific to the operating systems. I'm going to be looking for Windows. I'm sure if you are on Mac, you could also look for the corresponding Git client. Again, sometimes on Mac it's quite likely that it's built into their operating system. I'm not sure, but I'm just guessing. It's like I have some issue with the internet here. All right, there we go. So we have the Git clients here. We can download. It's actually an exe. All right. Here we have downloads for different operating systems. Right. So essentially, it started downloading for the 64-bit version. It did not need that. I'm going to cancel that, and then essentially once it downloads, you can go ahead and then click on the exe, and it should be quite self-explanatory and intuitive to actually go through the follow-up steps. And once you install that, okay, you can actually go ahead and add it to your path. So essentially, if I do an echo path here, echo %path, okay, it should be available in my path. Otherwise, you have to go ahead and add that to the path. So wherever the path is right now, if I look for this one, I'm not sure where it is, but it has to be there. And if you add it to the path, you should be able to access Git on the command line. So I can execute commands like git ---- version to make sure it is actually present and available on my system for source code check-ins, checkouts, and all that stuff. So essentially, that's what we have to do. And I've already done that bit. Go ahead and clear the screen for now. In case you've not done that, you just have to say set path is equal to %path, existing path, and then the semicolon, and then the path where you've installed the Git client. Okay, path to Git client, path to Git. Super. So since I've already done that, I'm not going to go ahead and do that again. And let's see what we can do here. So inside of our project right now, if I do a dir, it actually lists a few things here, including a gitignore file. Okay, and if I do a dir /a, it actually lists a file called .git. So right now it appears that when we do a npx create react app, okay, we generate a React folder structure, which is Git aware. So essentially, it creates a .git file, which essentially initializes our folder structure with Git. So if I go inside of .git, it should be having a lot of details. Yeah, so it maintains a lot of stuff, config and description and all the indexes and logs related to the Git here. Okay, so our project is already initialized with Git right now. So what it means is that if I do a git status, it'll give me some information saying that we're on branch master and all these files are ready for check-ins. Okay, but the question is, we do not, if I go ahead and say where is our remote repository by typing this command, it doesn't provide me any details. So essentially we have not connected our local repository here to any remote repository. So our code right now is susceptible to any kind of hardware crash or machine conking out. So in order to address this, let's head over to GitHub and let's go ahead and create a remote repository. I already logged into GitHub here. I will go ahead and create a new repository. So let's click on the link here, the new link right on the left hand side. And in here, I can go ahead and create a remote repository, and I will call that FE_INDI cafe. All right, and it says it's available. We are good to go, and we can also say it's a front-end code base for the cafe app, and I'll make this private. You can also make it public. I'm going to make it private, and at some point in time when I'm comfortable that this project is good enough to be shared with the rest of the community, I'll go ahead and make it public. And I'll also go ahead and add the .gitignore. Maybe I could do that essentially, but since I already have that, I will not do so. Choose a license. This is again not mandatory. I'll go ahead and uncheck that also. And it also says this will set the master as a default branch. Change the default name in your settings. Okay, I'll go ahead and I'll just choose Apache license too. I'll go ahead and create the repository. It should then create a repository for me. I want to make sure this string here is actually similar to what we used here, FE_INDI. All right, super. So we're all set here. Okay, actually, you know what, I can add the .gitignore as well here. Okay, which means it allows me to add a gitignore that's very specific to Node. Maybe we'll do that for our backend, because right now we already have a gitignore which is generated by the Create React app. I'll go ahead and uncheck this, and I'll say create repository. Let's go ahead and take a quick pause. No, maybe not necessary. So it's gone ahead and created the repository here, and this is the URL of our repository. And we'll take this repository and go over to our front end, meaning the command line interface. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to execute a few commands here, and one of which would be to add the remote origin, right? So I'll say git add origin, and I'll paste the URL that I just copied. Oops, not this one. Let me see. Let me copy this. Okay. Let me see if I can actually go ahead and paste it in here. Yes, there we go. I'll say enter. Spec did not match origin. Okay, I have to say git remote add. Sorry about that. Git remote add origin. Yeah, there we go. And if I do a git remote -v, I should be able to see my remote origins. Again, this is a one-time activity. You don't have to do it every time. So once you're set up, then you can seamlessly check in and check out files and push new updates and stuff like that. Okay, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'll do a git status here. Okay, and then it'll list all the files that are available for me to essentially to be pushed to the remote repository. Okay, I'll first say git add and dot. Okay, I also have the gitignore here, so that shouldn't be a problem. So it'll essentially, if you look at the gitignore, let's take a look at the gitignore. Okay, I want to point out a couple of things. There you are. So in here, If I go to the git ignore, what it says is that it'll ignore the node modules directory, which is quite heavy actually. So we don't want to check this in because we can always generate it if you have the package.json here, right? It'll also avoid .pnp files, the build directory, and all these other kinds of files like the debug logs and the yarn error logs and stuff like that. Okay, and if you have anything specific that you want to add here, you could come back and then add it at a later point in time. Okay, but right now this is what the git ignore is doing. So with that in place, let's go ahead and add all our files here, and I will say get the entire. I'll just say add the entire folder by saying git add dot. So I'll go ahead and add that, and if I do a git status now, it'll say these are all changes that are ready to be committed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say git. I'll actually go ahead and execute another git command, git commit, and I'll provide a message layout implementation for Indie Cafe. Okay, super. So that's gone ahead and committed to the local repository, and if I do a git status now, it says you're on branch master, nothing to commit, but we actually need to push this. What we can do is if you want to check which branch you're in, you can say git branch. It should give you, it already says it's on branch master here, right? So we know we are on git branch master, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to say git push origin master and say enter. Okay, and it'll ask me for my GitHub password and user ID, and let's say enter. Ask me for the password, and I'm going to go ahead and enter the password. Hopefully it's going to go up now, unless the password is wrong. Okay, looks like the password itself was probably wrong. What is it saying? You may first have to place rejected. Okay, you have to do a git pull. Okay, let's go ahead and say git pull. Alright, looks like we had a momentary internet issues here. Looks like that's resolved. So let me see if I can pull the remote origin, pull from the remote origin on the master branch. Let's say enter. Hopefully that should go through fine. Alright, super. Refusing to merge unrelated histories. Okay, we have some problems here. Alright, looks like we had some issues here. So what I went ahead and did was executed this command, allow unrelated histories, and I think it was able to go ahead and then do the pull for me. Okay, and next what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and say git status. We can go ahead and push now. I should be able to do that. Okay, so let's see, do a CLS here, control screen, I'm sorry, clear screen, say git push origin master. Yeah, this is the one. Okay, let's go ahead and push them. Hopefully this should go through fine this time around. It'll give me a prompt now to actually go ahead and key in my credentials. Super, and hopefully this should go through fine this time around. Let's see, fingers crossed. Looks like it's writing something to our repository. Should be fine. Might take, it's at 34%, slightly slow. Alright, so this is now completed. I will go ahead and say the current repository. I'll go ahead and look at this one. It should now be updated. Right now it says, we got a few commits here 3 minutes ago. So if you look at it, we have one branch, which is the master branch, and that's the default branch, and going forwards, we'll add more and more dev branches and merge to the master, and eventually deploy it using a deployment pipeline. So I think we'll take a pause here. We have all our source code on the Git repository right now, which is a great progress, and we'll come back in the next section and then look at how we can integrate the source code repository to a deployment pipeline. And we'll also be deploying this source code on a cloud platform which will host our React UI app. So let's take a look at that in the next lecture. We'll come back soon.